Hey there, it's Joy, and I'm having such a dilemma right now. And I'm making this video not because I am like teaching information this time. It's because I'm just like, oh my goodness, I have no idea what to think about this. All right, so here's the thing, the heart of the question. What is the nature of houses in an astrological chart? Is it that when we're born, we get this like moment in time, like frozen onto us or like imprinted onto us, and then we're just like that forever? Or is it just conditioning? So I've used astrology and other methods to explore my own inner world quite a bit. And I've found that each of the planets in my chart is actually like a part of me, and I can interact with them. I can like have a conversation with my moon, for example. And what I've found with them is that the sign that they're in is an integral part of who that part is. And the house, not so much. That's been my experience of my own inner world so far. However, when it comes to how different placements interact with the world around me, the outside world, that's where I see the house placements actually make a difference. So even though I don't see the houses as being like a part of my psyche, they're still important. So here's the thing. If when we're born, we get like this snapshot in time, like the ascendant and midheaven in particular as angles. Well, angles are essentially just house cusps, but they're the cusps of angular houses. And the ascendant and midheaven are based on like the position of the earth when we're born. So like it seems pretty relevant. It seems like theoretically it like could be a part of us. Um, my own inner exploration so far just hasn't really entirely shown that yet. And okay, so I've started using something called local mean time instead of standardized time when I look at charts. But there's also local apparent time. I have a different video about the differences between that. But essentially, if you're defining time by the position of the Earth in relation to the sun, then you're talking about local apparent time. If you are using standardized time, so like at the beginning of a time zone, the sun is going to be at a different place when you look up in the sky than it is at the same exact time if you are all the way at the other side of that time zone and look up in the sky at the sun. Like it's not actually the exact same time in terms of solar time. However, um, because we have clocks that keep track of time for us and we don't use the sun to keep track of time, it makes more sense on a like day-to-day basis, like as we go about our lives, to use standardized time. So like my friend who lives in the next city over is going to know that it's 6 o'clock like there the same time it's 6 o'clock here if it's in the same time zone. Now if we live 5 minutes away but we cross a time zone to get from my house to her house, now it might be 5 o'clock there when it's 6 o'clock here. And even though we only live 5 minutes away, and that's fine if we're standardizing time. And if this were numerology and the time you were born mattered, that it would make sense. I feel like I'm tangenting a little bit too far on this, but in that case it would make sense to use standardized time because that was like the official time when you were born. Like like as far as like numbers go and how things are standardized. However, because this is astrology and we don't like care as much about the numbers in terms of oh, I feel like that was the wrong thing to say, because numbers do make a difference. Like numbers are important in astrology, just not like they are in numerology though. Like they're a different kind of important. um, Anyways, what I'm getting at is that I think it does not make sense to use standardized time when looking at charts. It just doesn't. Like, to me, either local apparent time or local mean time makes a lot more sense. But which one? And one of the other really important things with this is relocation charts. So I promise this is all connected. With relocation charts, when you go somewhere that's like far enough away from wherever you were born that doing a relocation chart changes the house placements and the angles in your chart significantly, you might find that it's actually really different living there than it is living wherever you were born. And if you move again to somewhere else that's far away from both of them, it could change again. So some places feel a lot more comfortable to live based on how it changes our house placements. And sometimes people with interceptions can find that they can open up their interception a bit by moving somewhere where they don't have an interception in their chart, as an example, theoretically. And like I've heard people say that this has been their experience. Um, I have an interception in my chart, and I've never lived anywhere that I didn't have something intercepted. So, in any case, here's the question. If our ascendant and midheaven are something that's like imprinted on us at the time when we're born, then doing relocation charts like might change how we experience life in that part of the world, but they're not going to change our natural tendencies and like how like what our values are and like how we experience ourselves. Now, here's where it gets even more complicated. If we're born in a particular place and we only spend, say, 3 weeks there, and then we move somewhere that's very far away and we live there for the rest of our lives, which chart matters more? Which chart is more impactful? So if the houses are essentially, and this is the theory that I'm testing, not a part of us, but if they are instead the way that the world responds to us, then they are, in essence, our conditioning and also our opportunities. And that may well be the case. But if it is the case, then if somebody moved very soon after being born, then the relocation chart is going to be much more impactful in their lives than the birth chart. And if that's not the case, if the birth chart is still the most important thing, then local apparent time would actually make a lot more sense to use than local mean time. So the difference between local apparent time and local mean time is that local mean time is focused on how, like what, okay, so days have different lengths at different times of the year, right? In like here in the Northern Hemisphere, um, in the winter, the days are shorter, and in the summer, they're longer. So local mean time takes the average length of the day throughout the year, or yeah, the average length of time throughout the year, and uses that to determine the solar time. Whereas local apparent time is an actual like snapshot in time. of when the person was born, or just in general. Like if I'm looking at a transit chart, I use local apparent time. I only care, or an event chart. Like I only care about that particular moment in time. I'm not looking at um, how transits are going to impact that chart, just that exact snapshot in time. So if thanks for hanging in there with all these um, you know what, I'm just gonna keep going. All right, so if houses are your conditioning throughout your life, then it makes sense to me to use local mean time for the birth chart, as long as the person lived there for at least the first like 6 years of their life. Um, and if not, now it gets complicated. Now we need to look at relocation charts. And somehow, like, what if somebody moved every 2 years for the first 6 years of their life? Like, would you even figure out with a like how you know? Um, However, if houses, particularly the angles, are actually like imprinted on us when we're born, if they're like a part of us, then I wouldn't use local mean time. I would use local apparent time for the birth chart, because that just makes more sense. It's snapshot in time. It's whatever was imprinted on them at that very moment, and transits don't matter in that case. Because the argument for using local mean time instead of local apparent time, the only argument that I can think of anyways, is that what matures us throughout our entire life is the way the transits impact our chart. So like if I've got Saturn opposite my sun for a little while, it's going to challenge and mature my sun. And I actually have that in my birth chart, so it's a constant thing. But although with Saturn, it does get easier eventually as you get older. But anyways, like part of me wants to like tangent on that a little bit, but I'm going to reel it back in. Um, or for example, like the Pluto square Pluto transit happens in your late 30s, or Uranus opposition happens in your early 40s, or Saturn return happens for the first time in your late 20s. So all of these different transits have an impact on us, but it's not just those, you know, like the moon, every month transits our entire chart. And the sun every year transits our entire chart. And different planets all move at different rates and form oppositions, sometimes squares, sometimes trines, sometimes conjunctions, sometimes. And even if they're not aspecting anything, they're still transiting a particular part of a sign, like throughout that part of the year, or a particular house. So the argument for using local mean time, the only one that I can think of, is that the way transits happen all year long mature us will impact our house cusp placements throughout the year. So therefore, it makes more sense to use an average. I think in a way, this sort of depends on how the placements in the chart are distributed. Like if you've got a Capricorn stellium and like almost all of your planets are like in like winter, say, signs, um, or like if you've got like an Aquarius stellium and like almost all of your planets are like focused on that part of the chart, then it would make sense that you like the transits at certain points in the year are going to be more impactful. So maybe maybe the time for that part of the year should be weighed more heavily than the time, than other parts of the year. So maybe the mean doesn't make sense then. So this is very tangenty, and I guess the bottom line that I'm getting at is that I'm just so torn about this right now. I don't know if I should be using local apparent time or local mean time, and um, how heavily I should weigh relocation charts, and whether it matters how old they were when they moved. Um, if relo if relocation charts matter a lot, then especially if somebody moved very, very, very young, um, then I would say that local mean time makes more sense to use. However, if they are secondary to the birth chart pretty much always, no matter how young a person was when they moved, then I would say that local apparent time makes definitely the most sense to use for birth charts. I'm just so confused. I'm not confused. I'm really leaning towards local apparent time at this point. Yeah. So I'm, I guess, confused isn't the right word. Torn. I'm a little torn. I have some unanswered questions, and I can feel, um, I can see different perspectives. I've also had a fair number of people who are fairly into astrology and have been for a little while tell me that standardized time makes much more sense for their charts. And I've got to say, I'm not seeing it. I think they got used to the idea that that's their ascendant in midheaven and whatever their other placements are, and now it's hard to see it any other way. Also, I know that this is not standard. I know standardized time is the standard for astrology. I just don't think it should be. I mean, people can do whatever they want to do, obviously, but it doesn't make sense to me, and I think it's more accurate in terms of actually interpreting the charts that I've seen. I think it's more accurate to use local mean time or local apparent time. Like, both of those seem better to me based on the charts that I've been obsessively studying for uh, like, I don't know, a couple of months probably. Um, I just want to take a second to give a shout out to a particular author who introduced me to this idea of local mean time. Her name is Reverend Alice Miller. She's a very, very cool lady. We have corresponded a little bit because I actually emailed her a question about how to make local mean time charts because I was curious and I wasn't sure I was doing it right. And we corresponded a little bit, and she's very awesome. She's like in her early 80s, I want to say. Yeah, she was born in 1939. And it's been such a pleasure talking to her. And these books are phenomenal. So she has a bunch of different books, but these particular books are about interceptions, the two that I am in the process of reading. They're kind of heavy. So that's one of them. And here's the other one. So one's about interceptions in general and intercepted signs, and the other one is about intercepted planets, and they're both really good, and I highly recommend them. But I will say that they need a trigger warning. like I think just about every page is like triggering in terms of like childhood trauma type things. Um, Maybe not like every page, but like almost every page. Like, it's like, prepare for some heavy reading if you read these books, but it's also very healing. So, I mean, do whatever feels right to you, obviously. But yeah, I wanted to acknowledge that this author is the one that introduced me to local mean time. So, anyways, thank you very much for watching if you have watched this far, and you're awesome. And let me know what you think, like which chart works best for you. And if you want to see like how to make um, how to change the time zone setting on the chart, I have a separate video. Um, Maybe I'll just go ahead and throw the link to that in the comment. So in the comment, or not in the comments, in the description, um, so that you can take a look and um, see what you think. So let me know which chart works best for you. If you moved when you were a kid, or, well, if you moved at any point somewhere that's really far away from your birthplace, especially, and especially if you were very, very young when you moved, I really want to hear about which chart resonates more. So thank you for any information that you give me about what resonates with you. And yeah, all right, cool. Thank you very much.